kind enough to join us here in studio. Mahmoud, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I mean, there are so many different parts of this documentary that I find fascinating, but truly it's about looking inside of you and your evolution and your insecurities when you were a child and your controversies, et cetera. Was there ever a part of you that was like, wow, this is very probing. It exposes me on such a big level?
No, a whole bunch of it. Especially, just to navigate through Tourette's syndrome. Moments where you, especially early on in my life, you question, your existence. You question if you want to continue. Never to the point of wanting to commit suicide, but you wouldn't be necessarily disappointed if you left, the earth. And just the struggles also later on in my career with losing everything. That was probably the toughest that I've ever gone through, a challenge, because you always try to protect yourself from those things because you hear the stories of athletes, and not just athletes, but we're the ones that tend to get it more, the coverage. And so it's a lot, and it took a lot of me to, drop my guards and to be vulnerable. But I believe if you're telling a story, tell it.
It's really interesting that this movie has been made because I can remember about 2 years ago saying to one of my buddies who grew up in Denver, he was a huge Nuggets fan. I'm 43 years old, so I grew up on the era of the NBA that you played in the college basketball world, saying, you know who would make a great documentary? Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf's story. Like, it is so powerful. And he was like, absolutely. I love that guy. I would love to hear a story. And then this came about. I said, boy, but it has even more layers that I knew about your life. It starts with you not knowing who your dad was. And that's a really powerful moment because your brothers knew who their dads were, even if they were not in the picture. But your mom could not tell you or would not tell you who your father was. And that really beat you up inside. So did you ever get an explanation from your mom why she couldn't tell you or wouldn't tell you?
Never got an explanation. And I had to learn early. There were moments, it was like a roller coaster, that it would really bother me. But then you had to, you taught as athletes, man, suck it up, dig down, and you try to put it to the side. But until the day she died, the only thing she gave me, and this was when I finally got to Denver, I asked her one day, and I had to kind of find a way to get into it. I said, Mom, I love you. I said, you've always been for me, my mother and my father, and that's never going to change. I said, but there's a piece of me that's missing. I'd like to know. And I said, and that's who my father is. He's white. So, okay. And it took her all of those years just to tell me that. So when she told me that, man, I left it alone. I never bothered her again about it because I figured that it was something. And it still bothers me because I still don't know who he is. I know that side of the family. But the person that they were telling me who it could be, he was known. We have similarities. He loves music. Who doesn't love women, right? There are similarities to our personalities. He's a people's person. He doesn't get caught up in the racial thing in terms of if it works for him. He dated black women. Public knew that. I said, well, if the public knew it and my brother knows who his father is, then it shouldn't have been a big deal for me to know who he is. This is why I don't think it's him. I'm thinking maybe, I don't know if it was a violation. I don't know if it was a politician, somebody important, keep your mouth shut type of thing. Because both of my brothers know and I don't know. And I remember a guy when I entered high school, he used to drive by, and they said never was associated with basketball until I got to high school. And his wife was upset that he became attracted to the Gulfport High team. And he started putting money into our team. And we were able to go to different tournaments, unlike before. And I would see him occasionally. I'm walking from the basketball court, and he would drive by, and I think he had some type of Lincoln 4-door, and he would just turn his head slightly and look at me like he was just probing, and then he turned back around and keep driving. And that happened so much. I'm just curious as to why he would do that. And so I don't know. My mind is telling me that he could possibly be it, but only God knows.
There's a moment in this movie where it portrays you as a kid practicing basketball, and you say, I wanted to become so great at basketball so that I was important enough for my dad to want to come back and be part of my life. And that was, I stood there, I had a pause. I said, oh my goodness, this is powerful stuff. But that drove you early to be the best basketball players and to try to be famous.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things, because what child doesn't want to know their father and know that side? And you begin to question, like, why? What happened? Is it me? Is it, and I mean, literally, man, I wish I could somehow, I don't know, transport myself back and people back. I'm talking about near-death experience every day, because Tourette's also adds to that. And I'm talking about pushing myself to the point, like I'm going to do this thing, but of course it never happened. You're waiting for that moment, LSU, high school, NBA. And so you just give up after a while, in a sense. It is what it is, because you have to move on. If not, those type of thoughts can overwhelm you.
Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf joins us in studio. And so then the Tourette's part of things. As a child, you said you were about 9 or 10 years old. You were going through moments in your day that you had to keep repeating. Getting up out of bed, you had to keep doing it a certain way until you felt right. You had to tie your shoe a certain way until you finally got it right. And you had no idea what this was. And you went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, he's got habits, habits that come and go. Now, this is the 70s, I'm guessing, late 70s?
Yes. 70s.
And so they don't really diagnose you. Finally, you get diagnosed with Tourette's, and it's a breath of fresh air, because now you're like, oh, this is a thing. This is not just my cross to bear. This is a medical, affliction. And that to you, how did that change your life to know that it's something?
It was a relief. It's, figuratively speaking, it's a weight taken off your shoulders, because even though I was young, man, it was just something about that explanation. It just didn't make sense. But the doctor tells you that, and that's what you roll with. This is what you're taught. Yeah, you're taught. And to the point where they even give you this, the pill was so huge, massive, orange with like little jelly inside, man. I just couldn't take it anymore. I would gag, and I would throw it into cinder blocks in an unfinished laundry room area in the house. And but it was, man, such a relief. And I would have to constantly tell people, the habits, they come in, they go. It's like if I see something, and I'll do it. But also it made me feel like, okay, this was something that someone gave to me. I didn't develop this and create this on my own, because it's hereditary. And then I found out that my cousin Freddie, or uncle, my mother's brother, because there was an older guy named Pop that used to mentor me to a degree. When he see me in the street, he said, man, Freddie was my best friend. And he said, he used to do the same thing you did, or you do. And that's when I found out he had shot himself in the head, killed himself. I said, oh, wow. And I'm assuming, especially during that time, people not knowing, him not knowing, it can be overwhelming. Every day. I'm talking about from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Like, until you're asleep, you're constantly trying to negotiate, with Tourette's and yourself being balanced. And you never win, necessarily, like hitting things. Like even sitting in this chair right now, I'm moving. I've learned to camouflage it, but I might tighten my stomach up. I might go slow as opposed to going aggressive. I move it slow and hard, to keep control as much as possible, but it's constant. And so even in school, it's difficult, because you're too busy trying to stay still, because if you start moving around and twitching, kids can be brutal. So it's hard to concentrate on what the teacher is saying, because you're too busy trying to stay still. And that eventually moved me into special education class for a short moment, because people didn't understand. And I never wanted, my mother always spoke to me and never made it an issue. And kind of like in the Ray movie, you're not a cripple, right? Always like, so she never highlighted it. And so I never wanted to make it an issue or an excuse neither. So I wouldn't say anything. I would just suffer and deal with it the best I could.
You have a quote in this movie that I circled, and I said, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to use this for the rest of my life. I actually said, this is such a powerful quote. You said, there's a saying that says, God gives you strengths and weaknesses, and he gives you a strength to overcome your greatest weakness.
Yes.
And basketball became your strength to overcome the Tourette syndrome. How did that work?
Yeah, man. Basketball occupied my time. It was a healthy distraction from all of the other issues, poverty, and your surroundings, and not having a father, and even, how you saw yourself academically, not seeing a future in that. So basketball was that area where, look, and that's why I spent most of my time. It took the place of not having a father. It took the place of being distracted and paying attention to all of those things. And so it was a saving grace, as they say. It saved me, because no telling where I would be if I wouldn't have been introduced and fell in love with the game of basketball. And then just from basketball, what it does, meeting people and the resources that it gives you. And I definitely believe I was given that as a tool to help me get through this process of Tourette syndrome. Yeah.
Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf joins us in studio. His life is highlighted as part of a documentary called Stand, which debuts tomorrow on Showtime. Tourette's forces you to do something over and over and over again until you perfect it. And this happened on the basketball floor. Shooting free throws, shooting jumpers, dribbling. How much of your Tourette's is connected to polishing and perfecting your basketball craft?
I say this all the time. Tourette's pushed me where I myself would not have gone without it. I wanted to stop, and when I say I would train, man, I mean I'm talking about near death, and I'm paying attention to details, how it feels from the planting of the feet to the triple threat to the angles, explosion, every little minute detail. And if one thing didn't feel right in that sequence, I got to do it again. Whether I wanted to or not, I didn't want to all the time, but I had to, because the message was, the memo was, look, I'm going to make your day miserable. I'm going to keep it on your mind constantly. Like, I'm not going to let you rest. And so it pushed me. And I talk about this all the time, where I would go out and I'm imagining 2-3 individual people, and they're always fingertip this close, dribbling, shooting. I'm trying to escape my imagination just enough to get it off. And even when I shoot it, they're right there. So I'm trying to create space, because I understood at that age that if I can create space with my imagination, human being can't stay with you like your imagination can. They don't have a chance. And I would envision getting hit and the resistance. And after hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm ready to go. Nuh-uh. Tourette said, you got to make 10 shots while you're tired. I'm already huffing and puffing. And you got to do it while you're tired. None of them can hit around. And the move that you make prior to taking that shot could have no glitches, or it don't count. I could literally make 9 in a row. The 10th shot could skim the rim and go in. I can't retake the 10th shot and say 10, I'm done. I have to start back at 0. That may take an hour and a half. I'm walking off the court. As I'm dribbling, I mess up a few times. I got to back up 10 steps. I'm back underneath the goal. Same day. Mine is telling you to shoot it. I don't want to shoot it, because I know what's going to happen if it don't feel right, don't go in right. I'll shoot it, won't feel right. I got to do that same 10 2 times in a row. And I said, man, if I don't devise a strategy to end this, to get away, I'm going to die. Because I don't know if you ever trained where you can't catch your breath and the last minute comes out. So I started taking the ball after that drill and throwing it towards my house. So when I get it and I'm dribbling home, if I mess up, back up 10 steps. I'm too far away from the goal to have to do that. So I had to learn how to make adjustments. But it's because of all of that that allowed me to hone my skills the way I did. It wasn't all me. I was being pushed by that Tourette. I joke and call that part of me tautic. You know, I joke because sometimes you have to make fun of yourself. I said, man, tautic getting on my nerves today, man. God, it's one of those days. But without tautic, yeah, I wouldn't be the person and the basketball player that I became.
If people remember your career in the NBA, they could see your physical tics at times on the floor. Now it's not observable. So how do you have Tourette's kind of under control?
Well, if you watch long enough, you'll see it. But I've learned to camouflage it, and I try, especially in public, I try to make it less intense.
But medication never worked for you, you said.
No, they had me on I.D.A. when I was in high school.
Made you lethargic.
Oh, my goodness. When I wasn't moving, I wanted to eat, drink, and sleep. I was 155 the beginning of my senior year. We play 41 games at Gulfport High, and I'm playing most of the minutes.
Wow. And
we practice every day. I was 172 or 174 at the end of that. I go to LSU at 185. I'm technically 20-some pounds overweight from when I was in high school. So I.D.A. was worse. And then I found out later from a guy on, on this documentary, Mason, because he has Tourette syndrome. He said, hold on, you did all of that with I.D.A.? I said, yeah. He said, do you know what I.D.A. is? I said, no. He said, it's a psychotic drug. They give it to prisoners and people, like, to put them to sleep. Like, I said, really? And I'm always trying to maintain humility. I almost put my hand towards my back and started patting myself on the back.
Yeah,
I said, I did all that, really? So it was terrible. And then at LSU, they took me to a doctor, I think Jankovic in Houston, and he gave me Prozac and Prolixin. That didn't have the side effects of gaining weight. So I started to, the second year I trimmed down to maybe 169. But I don't take medicines. I just started, I said, man, I'm just going to do it my way. So I started praying. I started trying to watch more what I ate. My brother's into naturopathic. He's for 30 years. So talked to him about certain things and food combinations, hot and cold, all of that stuff. I try to exercise. I'm religious with training. And I just try to get proper rest and stay away from negative stress, negative people. And so that's worked for me. Yeah.
Wow. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf joins us in studio. At LSU, you're just incredible. You're scoring at a crazy rate. You have a 50-point game. I mean, you have set the SEC on fire. Shaq says some of your performances were the greatest single performances he's ever seen on a basketball floor, and he played with Hall of Famers, obviously. You get to the NBA, you're drafted 3rd overall by the Denver Nuggets, and it's not coming to you as easy in the NBA. The scoring isn't coming in bunches. You're struggling a little bit. And is it the pressure of the moment? Is it the pressure of all of those other things happening to you privately? What is going on that's causing the stress in the NBA?
Man, it's all of those things. I'm coming to a new city. Never been in an area where you have that snow and that gloominess, because that stuff affects you if you're not used to it.
You're from Mississippi. You played at LSU. You didn't see a lot of snow.
That's right, right. So, and then, this is my first time now having to really do the adult things. Find a house, get insurance, set up accounts, right? And that was a challenge. And then you come into a new a new team where Doug Moe drafted me, but they fired him. They brought in Paul Westhead. It was obvious from the door to me that Paul didn't really want me there. Also, I was listening to people, bad advice. You got to be bulky, you got to be big. Not thinking, man, I just did this 2 years in a row. These are the guys that end up going pro. They're going to have the same type of bodies. And so I never had a trainer in my life. So I ended up, man, just doing things the wrong way and eating more. And I was out of shape. I was like 19% body fat. And then it's a running gun. Like, even when the team is on the other end, get the ball and run it. I'm like, what? And so it was just so much. And that was the first time, that first year in Denver, man, I'm contemplating, man, do I really want to do this? And I'm starting to count the contract money, like, okay, take this back to Mississippi. I can make this work. I was just depressed, man. I didn't love the game anymore at that point. So all of that contributed to, for sure, how I played.
But then you find Islam.
Yes.
And you're in Denver. You had been very religious growing up, always had a Bible in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
But Islam changed the trajectory of your mentality, and did it bring you out of the funk that you were in?
For sure. After accepting Islam, I ended up going to a grocery store in Denver, actually, and I saw this article in a sports magazine, and it said he's a bust. And it clicked. You know, I said, man, I don't want my life or my story to end that way.
You had been the cover of Sports Illustrated as the chosen one, and now there's an article that's calling you a bust.
Yeah, and it was personal, and I wasn't mad at him. You know, I wasn't a player that I knew I could be. And I started really training, flying guys in. Like, look, be at the gym at this time and this time. Outside of that, do what you want. Just be careful. And I came back, a total of like 40 pounds I lost, including the month of Ramadan having to fast. So that did something to me, man. It just gave me another level of, you would think that, not eating and drinking, you're going to be dehydrated and you're not going to be focused. It made me more focused. It made me more energetic. And as my weight started coming off, my rhythm came back, my explosion, and I just started going for broke. And one thing led to another, and that's what led to the most improved that year. But it just put everything in perspective for me. Gave me more of a balance that I never had. So definitely changed it.
Your NBA career has gone well. You're in the league for a number of years. You're scoring at a good clip. And then the national anthem controversy hits. You feel like, standing for the national anthem is not within your soul. You do not feel good about doing this. You'd prefer sitting during the national anthem, and this explodes.
Yeah.
The NBA starts fining you. You have to find a compromise to where you're going to stand, but you're going to look at the floor. And I'm guessing you're getting death threats and hate mail and hearing unbelievable things in the stands. Yeah. What is that chapter of your life like?
Oh, it was interesting. And it was so many things, too, that this is another reason I wanted to come out, because there were so many things that the media was saying that was inaccurate, that people just didn't know. It came as a result. I started reading a whole lot when I became a Muslim, and most of my education came from on the road. People would just come, and I'm a people's person, man. I mean, I love people, and I love conversation. This is how you grow, and so if I felt good about them, I would invite them to the room. And so every city I went to, there were people, and they had different disciplines. Some were good in history, some were good in politics, some religion, and they would introduce me to authors I never heard of, the Noam Chomsky's, Howard Zinn's, Gore Vidal's, you name it, Arundhati Roy's, and I would go get this stuff. And I'm reading, I'm having dialogue. So that's what began to, when your mind changes, look, what follows is your behavior going to change. Just a natural consequence of it. But they were saying, we called because it got back. Todd Ely, the assistant general manager, came to me, because I'd been doing this like 4 months or so the previous year. And he said, hey, man, someone noticed you haven't been saying you want to talk about it. I said, sure. We talk about this stuff all the time. On the plane, on the bus, as athletes, so many issues.
So you had been sitting during the national anthem for months, and people did not notice.
Didn't even notice. And it wasn't until Todd Ely came to me, and he said, someone has been noticed. Would you like to talk about it? I said, sure. And I said what I had to say. I'm coming to shoot around. We're playing Orlando Magic with Shaquille. We were decent. But when Jordan come to town, Shaquille come to town, there's more journalists in the building than usual. So I'm thinking they're going to talk to Shaq. But they directed toward me. They asked me the question. I spoke my conscience. And I'm coming to the game that night. I don't see anything. look, I hear this talk all the time, books about it, right? These issues. So what's the big deal if I say something about it? But it was a big deal because Jim Gillen said, Bernie wants to see you. I said, okay. I go down, he said, the NBA called, they want to suspend you and find you. If you don't stand, what do you say? I said, I'm not doing it. He said, well, they want to talk to you. So they called. And I wish I could remember who it was, but I'm assuming it was two of his top people. And if I ever meet Adam Silver, I'm going to ask him, was he on that phone call? But, and the reason I say that, because they identified themselves also as Jewish, right? And they were trying to give me an example to convince me to stand. And I'm listening, and I'm patient. And when they finished, I acknowledged, I said, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I said, but there's two things. I said, in this context. I said, well, one, I'm not Jewish. And that example that you gave me, not that just because you're Jewish, because we all have similarities and we have, commonalities in our belief system, that just because is that particular example that you gave, and I can't remember it, but I remember the moment. I said, that doesn't apply to me. I said, so I'm just going to have to decline, and I won't stand. And I'm so green, man. I've never been suspended, fined in my life. I'm thinking it's going to be an act of legislation. They're going to have to go through a process. I said, can I go put on my uniform, man, and get ready for the game? Bernie said, no. I said, I'm fine right now? He said, yeah. I said, wow. I said, well, can I go and sit in the stands and support the team? He says, no. He said, they don't even want you on the premises. It's okay. So I walked down, I got my stuff, told some of my teammates that were in the locker room that I'm out, and they were looking at me like, what? I said, yep, I'm gone, man. And before I got home, it was global. I said, wow, is that serious? And so all the stuff that I've been reading about the Muhammad Ali's, the Tommy Lees, I'm like, this stuff is still here. Like, we haven't gotten over to be able to have these type of conversations. Even though the conversations are being had, it's something about an athlete who exposes this extra. Maybe it's because I don't have the title of a scholar in politics or whatever. It's not acceptable, but yeah, you learn real fast.
Such an extraordinary life. There's so many chapters, which makes this film so captivating on so many levels. It's called Stand. It's all about your journey through activism, basketball, the two intersecting. It debuts tomorrow on Showtime. I'm guessing it's available Showtime's app and Showtime's streaming services, yes, and all that type of stuff. Man, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, this is just amazing to have you here in studio, and I'm so glad that your story is being told because it's a really powerful one, and I think there's like 3 different ways to connect to your story and to learn from your story, and I don't know, I found it to be one of the most powerful sports documentaries I've seen ever, and I'm addicted to sports documentaries, so I've seen a lot of them. Yeah. So this one is special. You feel good about how it came out?
Yeah, I feel good. Let's just face it. When you telling your story, there's going to be things like, I wish I would. Yeah, that's just natural. But Jocelyn Rose Lyons, she did a great job. And actually, she was the first person that ever allowed me to see it, to get my thoughts on it, because a lot of people don't want to show you. And I get it, because sometimes you want to inject and change so much. But I appreciate that she was very supportive, didn't have arrogance, like, look, I want to know what you think. And she listened, so it was good.
Thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you, I appreciate it.